Can you give a quick introduction about yourself and your role at Profound?
Yeah, my name is Nirav Bhagat. I am the co-founder and head of marketing and analytics for Profound Commerce. I think the majority of my time, probably 2/3 of my time, I spend working on customer acquisition efforts, both on our marketplaces and off, and the subsequent 1/3 of my time, sometimes a little bit less, is spent defining the information and analytics architecture for the company.
Can you give an introduction to Profound Commerce, your business model, and how is it positioned in the market?
Yeah, Profound Commerce is a company that attempts to take marketplace products, proven marketplace products, and use that as a basis for turning that marketplace product into an omni-channel brand. We tend to focus on categories and niches where we think we can develop or position our products to a community of enthusiasts that use that product or partake in the activity that our product also is used in. Unlike others that are doing things kind of similar to Profound Commerce, there's a couple of differentiators that we have. One is that partly due to just the historic nature of how we were founded, we've been capital efficient, and we've been focused a lot on unit economics here, sometimes to the detriment of some other big bets that we potentially could have taken with our brands. The other thing that we focus on is a lot of what is called audience development or activity off Amazon, developing these communities of folks that we activate into the brand.
Got it. Yeah, interesting. You've mentioned that you were very cost effective from the beginning, Nirav. Especially in the tough times, do you see that helping your business? Because couple of years back, there were aggregators who raised a ton of money.
Yeah, so I'm not sure the extent to which this will be helpful. I will say that we have always been really efficient in terms of our operating expenses. And that has allowed us maybe to survive and potentially on some days even thrive. Whereas maybe there's some set of aggregators that are running into some difficulties with debt covenants and the like. I will say though that one thing that I've come to appreciate is that growth tends to solve a lot of problems. And when brands, assuming those brands aren't complete cash hogs, when brands are growing up and to the right, you can afford to be a little less disciplined when it comes to OpEx than when brands are having much slower growth or potentially even shrinking, in which case it really does matter what that OpEx is and what the efficiency of the spend is.
Can you talk about how your life was before working with Saras? What are some of the problems that you were facing?
Yeah, so before Saras, we understood early on the need to have management reporting govern our decision making with our brands, and the management report from the get-go, we started with a collection of 4 brands. So even now we have 17. When we had 4 brands, the problems of trying to decide what to do every day were no different than the problem that we have today of having 17 brands and trying to figure out where to allocate our management attention. Back then, we chose we thought it was too early to invest in software infrastructure in order to provide management reporting and guidance for which brands, which products were performing well, both on Amazon and off Amazon. We instead solved this problem by hiring some very smart analysts in a low-cost geography. These analysts were run through a similar interview process as you would interview for, say, a management consulting type of position or any other sort of like analytically rigorous position. And we hired these really great, smart analysts, and then they served as our analytics stack. But inevitably, what that meant was that the majority of their day was spent scraping data out of Amazon Seller Central and all of these other sources that we use in order to provide management reporting, and leaving very little room to actually perform analysis, nor provide recommendations for the business for what to do next, having concluded something from the analysis. And that's really what life was like before Saras, which is scaling through a set of hiring really bright people, and then having them serve as our data fetchers, our data transformers, and our data loaders, where the end result, where our delivery means was a set of Google Sheets.
Got it. And is there a sense of how much time they were spending into all of these data jobs, Nirav?
Yeah, so previously I had a team of 3 analysts across, I guess, 9 brands, and the majority. If it's from a low cost geography, the time savings versus software is always like it's not a great way to kind of think about things, but it was really more just the opportunity cost of I've hired really smart folks who I know can do a lot of critical thinking and help us grow these brands. I'd much rather they spend that 40 to 50 hours a week doing that. And maybe a small portion validating data from a database, as opposed to like the inverse, where they're spending most of their time fetching data from a database or data from sort of public sources like Seller Central and whatnot, and spending very little time using that big brain of theirs.
Was there a specific trigger that made you think, okay, now we need to invest in analytics systems?
Yes. So the specific trigger for evaluating a set of partners for us to develop our analytics infrastructure was the acquisition of another brand holding company and another 7 brands that came from there. The team of 3. I suppose I could find more folks. But I wanted to make sure that I found analysts and not data fetchers, and so the bar was high, and I was running into constraints in terms of our ability to hire more folks that were both able to do the higher order analytic thinking and be happy with spending their day serving as the sort of the data ingest and transform layer of our analytics infrastructure. That was the impetus for us finally saying, okay, it's no longer time for us to scale through people. We now have to think about scaling through software.
What different options did you try before leading with Saras?
Yeah, so there are several options that we tried or were evaluating. The first was something like a simple Google Sheets plugin to fetch data from the same sources that humans were fetching from. We found that our needs were much greater than what a single plugin might provide, and there was a set of transformations that needed to occur, and really the plugin was truly not that much better than a human spending the time fetching from a data source. The other option that we considered was sort of building it ourselves. Both me and the founder of Profound Commerce and CEO Matt, we have a background in engineering. I previously ran the data and admin tools products for an affiliate website called Retell Me Not. So I was familiar with the problems and the software required to ingest data, transform it, load it into systems, make it available for product features. The differences between a batched oriented pipeline and a near real time oriented pipeline, et cetera. So I knew that this is a very heavy infrastructure undertaking, and it was an option for us to hire a data engineer and have them develop the same set of tools that we ended up purchasing and renting with Saras Analytics. The last option that we had, so build it ourselves. There was the Excel plugin, and of course the other option was to other software service providers. The notion of sort of a time and material basis kind of contract to develop this infrastructure. And so that's what we have. And of course, then there was Saras and Balaji and the folks that we had met, Krishna and others, to consider building this for us.
And what prompted you to choose Saras over building it in-house?
In a word, well, we chose Saras because they've seen these problems before in our specific domain. I believe that it is really valuable. So data engineering is it's a domain unto itself, different from other aspects of software engineering. Further, the specific data sources that you are ingesting and transforming have its own particular details that even if one is a data engineering expert, if you're unfamiliar with the specific sources that you need to write software to handle, it's a much harder problem to solve than if you're already familiar with the set of data sources that you're using. And in the case of Saras, we were confident that nothing that we were asking for at this point, at least from a data ingest perspective, was a set of data that Saras hadn't already seen before or had build analytics infrastructure around for other clients. And so we were confident that this was the reliable bet in the space.
Got it. When you say specific sources, you mean the Amazon Seller Central, Vendor Central, advertising system?
Absolutely. I mean, marketplace sources as well as the standard sources for advertising and sales data off Amazon, Shopify, and the big 2 or 3 ad platforms, Facebook, Microsoft, and Google.
Did you evaluate any third-party point solutions, Nirav, ones that provide you out-of-the-box reporting on Amazon?
Yeah, we knew that at some point, as the complexity of our business grew, that we inevitably would be asking for one-off transformations and one-off uses of our we wanted to build on top of a data set to solve the specific problems that we have in our business. And so we knew that the particular thing to solve for was having clean, normalized data in a database that's highly available. And if we could just have that, then we felt confident that would provide a solid enough foundation for us to, build ourselves with the use of, some selective, smart folks, the solutions that we needed to run our business. And that's really what I was primarily trying to solve for. just get me clean, highly available data in a data set, in a database that we can in turn build upon.
Is it fair to assume you intuitively knew that a point solution would not be able to customize to all of your business needs?
That's right. We understand that like the business model and the economics of point solutions are such that when it comes to total cost of ownership, we were afraid that you find a point solution and then you find specialists to build on top of that point solution and integrate with that point solution. You're inevitably looking at a very expensive project to get you what you needed. The analogy is building a car, we needed a reliable engine and some set of axles and wheels, but everything else we were interested in as the need arose to build ourselves, and we were much rather interested in doing that than buying a Camry and hacking on the body of the Camry to make it the car that we needed.
In fact, I recommend. In fact, I use this analogy that going with a point solution is like living in a hotel room versus going with a custom solution that you own is like building a house, right?
Yeah, and that's a great analogy, especially and look, in many cases the hotel room is fine, especially if depending on your needs, you don't need sort of custom solutions. In fact, in some cases the custom solution would be more expensive than the hotel room. But we found that like truly like this is. And you may want to edit this one out, Balaji, but we found that this was a very modestly priced solution for the value that we were getting as well. And so the hotel room versus a custom home, the difference wasn't that much more to have a custom home versus a hotel room.
In fact, our mission statement is this, Nirav, which is we want every mid-market company to be able to build their own home, and we want to build software and the team to support that endeavor, Nirav. So our pricing is deliberately affordable, even though we know that we can make we drive a lot more value than the price that we charge. It's by design and not an accident. Yeah, thanks for that. Can you talk about the solution that Saras set up for you, touching upon the different elements that we used in the tech stack?
So Saras helped us. I think of the solution that Saras built in terms of two components. The first is helping us ingest data from a variety of sources. The primary source would be the Seller Central equivalent sources of Amazon, whether that's sponsored, all the advertising APIs and the seller partner API. But it doesn't end there. Per the mission of Profound Commerce, which is we're building omni-channel brands here, and so the ingest layer involves a variety of connections to outside data sources outside of Amazon, whether that's Shopify or any of the ad platforms. We know that documentation might be available in order to write your own code to ingest data from these sources, but it's really hard to keep up with changes, the interfaces that these companies have, and that it's really hard to maintain availability and continually sort of kickstart the process to fetch data from these sources. So we were not excited about building our own set of data fetchers, and the Daton product solves this problem for us. It is now Saras's opportunity and problem to handle in terms of keeping up with the variety of changes that each of these partners make to their APIs and fetching us data in a reliable fashion. The next component of the Saras solution was the analytics database. So we chose BigQuery as our analytics database, and we chose we wanted to maintain from an end user perspective the use of Google Sheets as our reporting layer. We were not interested in going down the route of a self-service reporting tool like Tableau or any of the other providers that are out there. Instead, Sheets, and we work in spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are just how we need to deliver reports. The other perspective of the solution was the other part of data visualization was we needed an exploration tool. And so we chose Metabase as our exploration tool, where Metabase references a set of views and tables inside of the BigQuery database. The set of transformations and the ongoing running list of new transformations required and aggregations required to serve our business is the other part of the Saras Analytics solution for us. Can you talk about how your life improved after setting up this solution? Yeah, so at the most practical level, I previously said that we had 3 analysts supporting 9 brands. Now we have 2 analysts supporting 17 brands. Wow. Suggests that now we're able to scale at least the data ingestion part of like what we do in the analytics function through software instead of people. And those 2 people now are focused on a set of problems that I give them, hypotheses that they need to generate and then validate with a set of data from our analytics database. It's a very different, that was a small sliver of what they were doing previously. Now it is a larger chunk of what they're doing. So there's that. I have fewer people supporting more brands. Additionally, we've built a set of alerts and reporting to help steer what our company examines and where our company spends their time. And we do that through a couple of different means. The first is having a daily email go out that aggregates relevant information about how brands are doing month to date relative to our targets, identifies any variance relative to our targets. The second is specifically related to ad spend, and we have another alert. It's actually sent out through Slack that aggregates spend data relative to our performance targets, and notifies the brand managers and the PPC or PPC lead for where they need to make adjustments to potentially make adjustments to bid levels or budget levels. On the earlier point, Nirav, is it fair to say that before Saras, your analysts were mostly doing data engineering or maybe some sort of data quality check work? Today, you're able to convert them from a cost center to a profit center, where you now expect them to validate some hypothesis, generate insights, and help you with growing the business. I think so. That's a fair statement. I think Saras has helped us do more with less. As far as what the cost associated with what we're doing here is it's a small enough fraction of our overall operating expenses that like nobody is really worried about the analytics team going out of control and the analytics budget occupying too much of spend. It is a very modest and small fraction of like what our overall spend is, and even within our tech stack, it might have like a large chunk of our expense associated. Like there, but that said, relative to the value that we're getting
Yeah,
from this, it feels like it's really just it's not the worry that I have about.
yeah. Let's say 5 to 10% of your bandwidth was going into managing these three analysts, right? And your time was going into making sure that right data is available. Today, you're spending that 5 to 10% of your bandwidth, which is probably the most expensive component in the overall equation, into identifying hypothesis and driving growth. Is that a fair summary?
It is true that like management time is valuable, and so too is analyst time. And I will say, like, the biggest difference now is something, the point that you were making earlier, where now I have the opportunity to apply my analyst time towards a set of problems that are just much more critical to improving the P&L of the overall business than what I was able to do previously. Data quality and sort of reliability, like there will always be an aspect of what they do to validate that the data in our database is accurate and timely. But the amount of time they're spent doing that is way less than what it was before. And I hope that there will be ways for us to automate a lot, some aspect of what they do on the validation front.
Now that your reporting is automated, right, and you have an anomaly system in place where you get emails every day and you have some alerts in place, what is the roadmap for the solution, Nirav?
Yeah, so I think of it in terms of domains. There are specific domains where I'd like to do more work. One of the first areas where I'd like to do more work, and this is something that Saras is only part of my needs in order to solve this problem, is our ability to manage our marketplace based on the unit economics of the products that are on the marketplace. So right now we manage our spend according to our advertising spend according to a tacos figure. What I'd really love to do is manage according to like contribution margin. And so being able to ingest COGS into our analytics database, or have an integration with the other system that manages our COGS, and bake contribution margin into our reporting, such that we can understand, well, what are of the thousands of SKUs that we have on Amazon, what are the fraction that are most critical to delivering results for the company. The other area has to do with advertising and the fact that I believe that there are ways for us to optimize our spend by taking a more programmatic approach to how we raise or how we adjust bids and budgets. Now, of course, there are many tools that are available to do this for us, but the problem with those tools is that they don't find it the value that they have, that they believe they bring to the table is to abstract away all of the messiness of how those systems like manage bids and budgets, so that I'm not aware of like the messy algorithms used to adjust bids and budgets to optimize spend. I would like to have finer control over how bids and budgets are adjusted to extract the most contribution margin or out of our PPC spend. And as a result, that's why I think that I would like to experiment with building some internal tools to be able to adjust my advertising spend. Spending a lot of time is really having to do with the fact that management reporting of management reporting of sales and spend off Amazon. And so, I want to finish what we started when it comes to having the same level of rigor in management reporting that we do for our marketplace brands and our marketplace products as what we have for our D2C oriented brands.
Got it. Understood. Just double clicking on the aspect of optimizing bids, Nirav, is it fair to say that you want to use the same data that's sitting in your analytics database, run some algorithms around how you want to optimize bids and potentially push that data to Amazon and in some shape or form automate your
That's
bid
right.
man?
Our current state today is this is exactly what our people do. We look at a trailing 7, trailing 3, month to day, figure of like what we've spent thus far relative to our budget and our ACOS and our tacos. And we use that data to make both like high level adjustments for the overall brand, as well as low level adjustments into individual campaigns. What I want to do is I want to systematize the work that we're already doing to manage our spend, and instead use and systematize it using the analytics platform that Saras has built for us.
Got it. And is the prohibitive factor to use the third-party tools with respect to bid optimization are their models are black box, right? So that's probably one of the reason. And then they can be very expensive if you're spending a lot of money on ads. Are these
in general, we want to avoid tools or services where like the amount of like we get penalized for success or where they're a fraction of ad spend or something like that. But that aside, I think the biggest thing is like this everything that we're doing at Profound Commerce is towards the goal of creating a playbook for how you turn a marketplace product into an omni-channel brand, or how you have great success on a marketplace. And by giving control to a third party and having them figure out this problem for us doesn't help us further the mission of building out that playbook and that intellectual property associated with what are the processes that we have to develop internally in order to maximize the value that we get out of our ad spend on a marketplace.
What are some of the reports that we set up for you, Nirav? Can you touch upon that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 reporting areas or topics. The first is the sessions session level reporting at the child ASIN level. And these data are used for us to monitor our conversion rates and the health of our listings over time. The second domain where we've ingested, actually there's a handful of others. So the second domain is the Amazon advertising data. The main types. Third is we want to be able to our ad spend and our tacos in a very timely basis. And so a third set of data that we have ingested is the Amazon flat file data that is available on a more frequent basis, but of course lacks the session information because it's really just the orders that are placed, but allows us to calculate sales in a very timely basis. And then we have a set of information that's like off Amazon, our Shopify orders, and a set of ad spend data across Facebook, Google, and Bing. So those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 areas of spend that we have, or 7 areas of data that we've ingested into our the platform. There's several other like pieces of like internal data that we've thrown into the database to help us with our reporting. Everything from what are the categories that each of our SKUs are a part of, what the unit economics or what the landed costs of some of our SKUs are. I think like the first way to perform a report like that is forget about it, like integrating with an ERP or anything complicated like that. We're just uploading product costs into our database. And then using those product costs, which is again just as a point in time, we have an ability to have a very rough idea of what the contribution margin might be over a time period.
Would you recommend Saras, and what would be the main reasons you would recommend Saras to anyone?
Yeah. I would highly recommend Saras to other mid-market or larger companies in this space. The reason why I would recommend Saras has been the fact that the team has delivered against a contract we made in a timely fashion at a cost that is a very, very modest cost. And the combination of the two, saying what you're going to deliver, that and delivering that on time and at a reasonable budget, has been why we've been so happy with the Saras investment thus far.